Brooklyn, New York, a humid spring evening pressed against the windows of Rosa Alma, a fashionable Latin American restaurant tucked between a bookstore and a boutique florist on With Avenue. Inside, the scent of grilled mahi-mahi and fresh cilantro filled the air. The soft clink of glasses, occasional laughter, and low jazz buzzed under the hum of conversations. Among the guests that night sat Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, dressed in a modest navy suit, seated at a corner table with 2 aides. She looked distracted, barely touching her food. Her eyes scanned the restaurant, pausing every so often on the man behind the host's stand, Victor Herrera, the restaurant's manager. A composed man in his mid-50s, Victor wore a pristine white shirt, sleeves rolled neatly to his elbows, silver hair slicked back, and a permanent expression of calm control. The waitstaff moved like clockwork. But Alexandria watched them differently, every nervous glance, every subtle flinch. She had been in places like this before, just not with cameras waiting outside. Then, without warning, Alexandria stood up, silence swept the room like a wave. Her voice rose, clear and unmistakably firm. You don't get to hide behind your title. You humiliated her, and now you want to pretend it never happened? People turned. Forks hovered midair. One diner lowered their phone mid-scroll. Someone whispered, "Is that AOC?" Victor blinked, frozen. "Congresswoman, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," she interrupted. "You don't treat people like they're disposable. Not in my district." A young waitress near the kitchen dropped a tray, ceramic shattered against the tile. Victor's face stiffened, phones came out. The AOC didn't flinch. She stepped closer, her voice now quieter, but no less intense. "She came to you for help. You fired her. She told you something private, something painful, and you used it against her." Victor's reply was smooth, mechanical. "I'm not aware of any complaint, that's the problem. You were aware. You just didn't care." He lowered his gaze. The restaurant staff stood frozen at their stations. No one moved. Then Alexandria turned, reached into her coat pocket, and placed a small sealed envelope on the hostess stand. It had clearly been opened and resealed. Her hand lingered there for a beat, long enough for someone nearby to record it. Without another word, she walked toward the exit. Outside, the sound of camera shutters filled the air as she stepped into the street. Inside, the room remained stunned. Victor slowly picked up the envelope with trembling hands. His face drained of color, fade to black. The next morning, the video had been clipped, captioned, and reshared more than 3 million times. AOC loses it on restaurant manager. Hero or hypocrite? The Congresswoman under fire. What did he do? Internet divided after fiery confrontation. Cable news feasted. Some outlets focused on her tone, calling her unhinged. Others speculated about what the envelope might contain. But Alexandria said nothing. No tweets. No statements. No interviews. Only silence. In her Bronx office, the blinds were drawn. Her chief of staff, Natalie Cruz, sat across from her with a laptop open, browser tabs full of headlines. "You've got 4 TV requests and 3 ethics complaints," Natalie said flatly. Alexandria leaned forward, her elbows on the desk, her fingers interlocked. "Let them come." Natalie hesitated. Was it about Mary Bell? The silence stretched. Alexandria finally opened a drawer and handed her the letter, the one that had arrived 4 days earlier. Natalie read it slowly, her expression tightening with every line. "He said I was overreacting. That it wasn't that bad. That if I talked, I'd lose my job. I just needed someone to believe me." The letter was unsigned but unmistakable. Alexandria remembered Maribel well, her soft voice, her stories about working double shifts to send money to her grandmother in Guatemala, the anxiety in her eyes whenever someone asked for ID. 2 years ago, she disappeared from the restaurant. No warning, no goodbye. Staff had whispered, but no one filed a report. She was undocumented. She didn't exist in the system. "I don't want to go public with this until I know everything," Alexandria said. Natalie closed the laptop. You know the media's going to keep pressing. They can press. Across town, Victor sat. In his small office at Rosa Alma, blinds also drawn. On the desk lay the envelope, its paper creased, edges worn. Inside was a second letter, the original. He had read it 6 times that morning. He remembered Maribel too, and he remembered what he'd said to her. Don't bring this drama here. This isn't a therapy room. He had told himself she was exaggerating. That he had a business to run. That no one was really hurt, but now, the past was catching up. 2 years earlier, Maribel Reyes had arrived in New York with a cousin's contact and a suitcase of borrowed clothes. She was 19, undocumented, and terrified. She found work at Rosa Alma through a backdoor referral, no paperwork, paid in cash. Victor had interviewed her himself. He liked that she didn't ask many questions, the work was grueling. Lunch rushes blurred into dinner service. Her feet ached. Her English improved slowly, but she mostly listened, rarely spoke until one night, a regular customer, older, drunk, cornered her in the storage hallway. He whispered something vulgar in Spanish and touched her back as she passed. She reported it the next day. Quietly, nervously. Victor's response had been immediate, but not comforting. He's a friend of the owner. You must have misunderstood. She insisted she hadn't. Tears welled up. Just stay away from him. Don't make this into a thing. That same week, her shifts were cut. Then one day, she was told not to come back. No explanation. Maribel spent the following months drifting, cleaning offices at night, living on a friend's floor, eventually disappearing from even that circle. She wrote the letter on the back of a diner napkin. Folded it into a borrowed envelope. Sent it to a P.O. box listed on one of AOC's flyers from a community outreach fair. She didn't think anyone would read it. Victor wasn't the owner of Rosa Alma, he just ran it like he was. The real owner, Elena Navarro, lived in Miami. She'd invested in the restaurant through her husband's portfolio and rarely visited, but that morning, she called. You've got half the internet calling for your resignation, she said bluntly. Victor pinched the bridge of his nose. It was a misunderstanding. I don't care. I've got investors spooked. The press is calling. AOC walked into your restaurant and humiliated you in front of half of Brooklyn. What the hell happened? Victor hesitated. There was a girl. A former waitress. She made some claims. Is that what the letter is about? He didn't answer. Victor, she said, her voice colder now, if I find out you buried a harassment complaint and then fired the girl who made it, I didn't bury anything. But you didn't protect her. There was a long pause. Fix it. Elena said, and hung up. Back in the Bronx, Alexandria and Natalie began making calls, quietly, off the record. They contacted shelters, community kitchens, immigrant advocacy centers. No one had seen Maribel in over a year. They found a friend who used to live with her. She remembered Maribel talking about a church she sometimes visited in Sunset Park. She said it felt safe there. Like home. They went. The priest remembered her. She used to sit in the back pew, always wore the same hoodie, he said. Haven't seen her in months. Natalie left her card. If she comes back, please ask her to call. That night, Alexandria walked the streets alone for a while. She passed small bodegas, shuttered laundromats, a group of teens laughing on a stoop. The city buzzed with energy, but her mind was quiet. She pulled out her phone and opened the video of her confrontation. She watched herself, furious, trembling. But beneath that rage, she could now see something else: a grief, not just for Maribel, for every girl like her, made invisible by a system designed to silence them. 2 days after the confrontation, the New York Ledger published an editorial titled, AOC's Fury, Political Stunt or Righteous Stand? But buried in the article was a quiet line. Sources close to the congresswoman suggest the outburst was tied to a letter from a former employee at Rosa Alma. That was enough. By afternoon, journalists began knocking on doors in Brooklyn. Former staff at Rosa Alma started to talk, first off the record, then on point. One former dishwasher, Eduardo, said he remembered Maribel crying in the break room. Another waitress confirmed she'd told Victor about the incident. A third admitted he'd seen the customer come in often and drink heavily, but nothing was ever done. Victor watched the story unfold from his office, the walls feeling smaller each hour. He stared at his phone, at the unopened text from Elena, "Step aside, or we'll be forced to act." He didn't respond. Outside, the press gathered. Protesters appeared, some holding up signs with Maribel's name, and then, that evening, a new video emerged at a grainy clip, shot from behind the kitchen door, showing Maribel being led out of the restaurant by Victor himself. That she's holding her apron in one hand, her head low up. Victor's voice is faint but clear, "You brought this on yourself." The video is 12 seconds long. The IT changes everything. Asterisk that same night, Alexandria agreed to a sit-down interview on 60 Minutes. She hadn't planned to speak publicly yet, but the story had outgrown silence. The interview room was sparse, just 2 chairs, soft lighting, a glass of water on the table. The interviewer leaned in. "You've faced criticism for how you handled the incident. Why confront him so publicly?" Alexandria paused. She looked directly into the camera. "Because silence protects power. And I've spent my whole life trying to break that cycle." She unfolded Maribel's letter on the table. "This isn't about a manager or a restaurant. This is about the thousands of women like her who vanish from our systems without a trace. And we call it order. We call it professionalism. We call it not our problem. But it is our problem." The segment aired in full. The internet erupted again, but this time, with clarity. People began sharing their own stories. A wave of former service workers launched the hashtag her name was Maribel. The backlash against Rosa Alma intensified. That Victor's silence became guilt. And guilt, eventually, became fear. 5 days later, Victor requested a meeting. Not with the media. With Alexandria. It was held in a small community center in the Bronx. No press, no cameras, just a closed room, a metal table, and 2 chairs. He arrived looking older. The control in his voice was gone. "I didn't come to defend myself," he said quietly. "I came to apologize." Alexandria didn't respond. He continued. "I didn't touch her. But I failed her. I thought keeping the business running was more important than protecting one girl." She stared at him. "It always starts like that," she said. "Minimize the harm. Protect the system. Let the girl disappear quietly." Victor nodded. "I saw her once after she left," he said. "She was waiting outside, looking for her paycheck. I told her to come back another time. She never did." There was silence. Alexandria spoke finally. "I'm not here to accept your apology. I'm here to make sure no one forgets what you did." That week, Rosa Alma shut down indefinitely. Victor resigned publicly, releasing a statement that admitted to mishandling a serious internal concern and contributing to an unsafe workplace culture. More restaurants across the city began examining their own internal practices. Community leaders called for new labor protections for undocumented workers. Several Congress members co-sponsored a bill with Alexandria focused on whistleblower protections in the service industry, but the heart of the story, the girl herself, was still missing. Then, one morning, Alexandria received a call. A soft voice on the other end said, "You read my letter." She froze. "Maribel?" "Yes." "Where are you?" "I'm safe. I've been watching everything. I didn't think anyone would believe me." Alexandria whispered, "I believe you." Maribel's voice cracked. "Thank you." And then, the line went dead. 6 months later, Alexandria stood on the steps of City Hall, flanked by activists, former restaurant workers, and community leaders. She held a framed copy of Maribel's letter, now laminated and preserved. "This story wasn't about politics," she said. "It was about visibility. About justice. About a young woman who was never meant to be remembered, but who reminded us what we've been willing to forget." Behind her, a mural had been painted near Rosa Alma's shuttered facade. It showed a young waitress in a blue hoodie, half-shadowed, stepping into light. Beneath it, one phrase, "She disappeared." But not anymore. The story didn't end with headlines, it ended with remembrance, and in that, perhaps, began something better.